I have a question for you about that, and I hope you don't mind me asking it, but
You got there about 11 sessions before my therapist did.
I'm very northern. What do I do? Does that mean I can't become a lawyer?
You're not quite right, you might be wrong, you might be evil, you might be diseased.
I'm English, I understand English, and I just got it mixed up, sorry.
Can you imagine, like, you and I trying to be lawyers and we can't even fill a form in?
It's like a London bus apart from that.
If I get up in the morning and I'm still alive, that's a win. Well done, you're alive.
Did you feel like it was an industry that was psychologically safe?
I have had people say the rudest things about me. Someone took a brick to my head as I was walking home one evening.
You don't choose your beginning, but you can choose your end. Law has long been a profession reserved for the elite, a space dominated by privilege and wealth, accessible only to those with connections or means. But the industry is shifting and the gates are opening. Now more than ever, what sets you apart isn't just technical expertise or prestige. In this conversation, I'm talking with Patrick McCann, Director of Learning at Linklaters, Training Committee Chair of the City of London Law Society and co-CEO of City Century, designed to empower students from diverse backgrounds to pursue a career in law they may never have thought possible. Today, Patrick opens up about his own challenges breaking into the industry, the obstacles faced by aspiring lawyers from diverse backgrounds, and how the industry is truly evolving. What would you say, from your experience, is the biggest barrier to social mobility in the legal sector?
Money, funding. If you go through a traditional route into the industry, if you self-finance, which you sort of have to do for most of it, if not all of it, what's that, 120 grand? Because you've got to pay 3 years of university fees, you've got to pay 1 or 2 years of law school possibly, you've got to somehow live off something. Mobility journey into the legal sector, it's an unusual one. So I grew up with a British Army dad and a German mum, and I was a little queer kid in the 1970s in a very sort of a macho militaristic environment. The military bit was that we moved home every 20 years. At least you moved to a different town. Quite often you moved to a different city. So that was fairly disruptive in terms of education. So I jumped into a comprehensive school when I was 10, so a year ahead of when I was supposed to. I missed fourth year juniors in order that I could get into this particular school. And that sort of gave me some stability for 7 years. But the thing about moving around is I don't really have any long-term friends from, primary and junior school. But it also means you feel sort of vaguely disconnected. And so my dad had gone into the army at 16. It was the only way he could continue his education. My mum was a secretary or a switchboard operator or whatever she needed to be in order to earn money. She worked through the night when I was younger. And then the other thing was sort of being queer. I knew I was different and I was comfortable with that, but it also makes you not part of the dominant group, and you have a different way of thinking. Because I had a German mum and I was on a British Army camp in Germany at various points, that meant that didn't feel safe. Sometimes I got bullied. I remember running away from school one lunchtime because one of the kids had said he was going to beat me up later that day. I didn't really want that to happen. You did sort of feel that you were trying to break into something rather than you were part of something. And then I got to King's College London. I went there at the age of 17. I was very green, very young, very naive, very, very intimidated by my peers, most of whom, I would say 90%, had gone to some really good schools, public schools. I mean, the most common question was, which school did you go to? There was definitely a thing where they all knew each other. And there was a sort of this innate confidence, which it took me about 3 years to get over. I thought they must all be really brilliant and fantastic and just clever. And it took me 3 years to realize actually they weren't. So I still felt a bit of an outsider. And then I jumped into a law school and that was fine. And then I went into a law firm and I was told by my dean to go back into the closet, so I did. So then you sort of feel a bit more like an outsider. You can't really be your authentic self. I was really fortunate in that there was another trainee solicitor who had gone to the same university, not a particularly nice person, I would say, and he decided he would out me to everyone, having known that I was out as being LGBT at uni. So that was really helpful because, and this was in the sort of very early 90s, that was really helpful because I then wasn't seen as being a troublemaker. He had done that, and so it wasn't like I was particularly pushing an agenda. To be clear, I was pushing an agenda which was around acceptance and inclusion, but it didn't look like that. So that was really interesting. So that was sort of being an outsider as well. And then the other bit that I had was when I was coming out, the generation ahead of me, 5 or 10 years ahead of me, essentially died because they acquired HIV, went on to develop AIDS, and then most of them weren't able to get the medication, or the medication didn't exist for them to survive. I've come from the outside. I've had to deal with a number of layers, and I'm definitely not one of the dominant culture in city law and in law firms. So that's my sort of journey in.
That is an absolutely incredible story. Thank you so much for being so open about it, because I've never heard that story, and it just sounds like there were so many challenges along the way. It's amazing to hear and super inspiring. I have a question for you about that, and I hope you don't mind me asking it, but from what you've said, it sounds like a lot of themes that are coming up for me, which you've mentioned a lot, is that you felt like an outsider in many, many, many situations. And I know that a lot of psychologists and people talk about when you feel uncomfortable in a certain situation, you keep attracting that same discomfort. You actually put yourself on purpose in situations that will make you feel like that because it's kind of like a familiar feeling. So, my question is, do you feel like you might have subconsciously be placing yourself in an industry where it is notoriously, especially at the time, for being an industry for certain types of people? Or do you feel like subconsciously you potentially wanted to mold or change that industry, which is what you've actually spent your career pretty much doing, I would say?
I'm just really interested that you got there about 11 sessions before my therapist did. So I think officially in my head, what I was recognizing as doing was I was trying to get a really good job in a profession that I thought was respected. But it was not as sophisticated. That was just, there was this really cool lawyer. There was 2 seasons of a TV series in the 1980s called Petrocelli, and he was just really cool. He was a San Diego lawyer come detective. It was a bit bizarre. And I had just thought, that's what I want to do. And that was at the age of 10. Now, if you tell your parents that you want to be a lawyer at the age of 10, no one's ever going to question that. So I got on that conveyor belt. What I didn't know was that it was going to be a certain, and I should have worked this out, it's a certain type of person. And certainly not that we knew many lawyers, but within the town that we were in, the lawyers were the posh people, essentially. They did go golfing, and they did have the nice cars, and they did go on the good holidays, and they did speak in a certain way, and they did read the Telegraph, etc. And they did go to the opera, up to London to the opera, or whatever it would be. And they definitely went to the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. I hadn't really recognised that was the industry that I was going to be going into. And there are 2 or 3 occasions that I really remember. When I interviewed for the training contract I got with Denton's, the partner and I had a bit of a debate, should we say, about offices and who works in offices. And I happened to, I said, look, I imagine that the people that actually know what's going on and can actually get stuff to happen to the secretary. So you really have to work well with them. And I think when I told him that my mum was a secretary, that made him go, okay, I get it now. So he warmed to me at the time. But then as a junior lawyer, like 3 or 4 years after that, I had a particular boss who, I think it's fair to say that we didn't see eye to eye. And her view, in fact, the line was, another problem with you, Patrick, is that you're too friendly with the secretaries. And I found that so affronting when my mum was a secretary and she was saying, we're not like them, we're better. I can't remember you said we're a class above, but it was definitely you shouldn't mix with them too much because you're with the lawyers now. So I found that really upsetting, and it's taken me some therapy to realise that what I tend to side with is people who are felt to be outside, and I tend to try and create that group around them. Another feature of my sort of career is that I'm totally collaborative. I totally like to work with lots of people. I like a crowd about me. It drives my introverted husband absolutely crazy. I like to go on holiday. He's calmed me down on this, but I like to go with 10 people. And it was only recently that, when I was talking to this therapist, she was saying, you were quite on the outside as a child and all through this, and this. And now you seem to surround yourself by people. And I do it because I want to be part of a group and I want to make sure that people are part of that group. So when I see what, Holly, you're doing, and also let's call out Helen Pamela as well, where you are saying we can create our own group, we can still succeed. This is how we can succeed within or outside of a sector. I find that incredibly magnetic for me. It's like, oh, I want to hang out with them. I want to be with those people, because we are trying to make people feel not just included, but I would say safe and celebrated and valued and like settled and sort of grounded in their own ability. And that's the stuff that, just, it makes my heart sing when I see things like that. I would always go to the person that who's, I know people talk about challenges, etc. I think it's about layers. It's how many layers you've got to get through and navigate through to get to the big prize, or get to wherever you want to go. Raison d'etre, that's my, oh, look at me slipping into French. That's my purpose in life. And so I'm always going to be there for you if that's the thing. And that's one of the things I've tried to do.
I guess in a way, if that's always been your purpose and you've maybe just realized it over, I don't know how long, but maybe way back when you started, that was probably always something within you that felt like, I want to make everyone feel included. I want to hang out with the secretaries. I want them to feel included. And it's crazy because I think the industry has come so far in terms of, yeah, I mean, even back in the early 2000s when I did work experience in a law firm and the partners were going off to play golf, and the secretaries, I was hanging out with the secretaries and like, why are those guys playing golf? Like, what's all that about? This is a bit, I don't know, it seems a bit odd. But yeah, it's come a long way. I feel everyone's more collaborative.
Yeah, I think they really are. I think there are a couple of reasons for that. I have a belief that if you have to navigate lots of layers, you have to bring in a lot of ability, a lot of different skills, a lot of different qualities that can then become your superpowers. And so through hardness comes ability, I think. And so I think there's a correlation, a causation between having to navigate lots of things and being then able to work, as a lawyer, for example, or in legal, where you have to be able to identify the problem, solve the problem, create a bit of an action plan, bring some people around you, do some advocacy, be resilient, work through, keep going, try and get on with people that you might not get on with. And all of that comes from those challenges. You have to be prepared to stand out from the crowd a bit, because if you come from, say, low SEB, you becoming a lawyer is in itself, and doing well at school, etc., might be not what most are doing, might be atypical. So I think all of that will help you to become a lawyer. It's definitely changing for the better. I do think we still have a ways to go. I really won't be happy until all of the top positions in all of the top sectors are broadly representative of society. I have a fundamental belief that where you start should not determine where you finish. If we need to help you along the way, if we need to level up for you, if we need to assist, that's a cool thing. If we need to look at your potential rather than your achievement, which a lot of law firms are doing, I think that's great. The thing that tends to happen in law firms, and you write about this, about in the legal sector, is the largest proportion of people will fit into a broad description and tends to be white, tends to be from UK, possibly Europe, tends to have a good education, which has quite often been paid for, tends to have grown up around professional services, or certainly that sort of top tier type thing, has gone to certain types of education institutions quite often, and so that brings a commonality with it, which means that that's what people talk about. So golf, opera, Tuscany, saying things in Latin, talking about classic books or whatever, authors, the National Theatre, all brilliant stuff, right? The London Symphony Orchestra, all brilliant stuff, but it can be quite, and I understand it, any group of people that have a commonality will tend to be around that, but that can be alienating for others, can be difficult to get in. I mean, it's a cliche, but knowing where the knives and forks go. Now, I happen to know that because my dad was in the army, and that was like a real thing, right? Formal dining was a real thing. But I only learned that through happenstance, not because, you know, I sought out the opportunity, or not because the opportunity was given to me. So I'd really like the fact that the conversations are getting more varied and more interesting.
Definitely. I had a similar experience when I decided that I wanted to get into law and become a lawyer. And, you know, when you're looking at lawyers and stuff and you're thinking, well, I don't like playing golf. I don't like speaking Latin. I don't know different things. I don't sound posh. My accent isn't Southern. Like, and this was a big one for me. I was like, I'm very Northern. What do I do? Does that mean I can't become a lawyer? But I was like, you know what? I'll just do it anyway. But it kind of put me off a little bit.
Holly, you know, I was going to say this before you said it. I love the fact that you have your accent. I love the fact that that identifies you as being atypical for, you know, what I perceive to be still, you know, the sort of the prevalent way of saying. That's not to say that people that have come from, you know, from non-socioeconomic, sort of non-socially mobile backgrounds aren't valued. They absolutely are. But I love the fact that we can sort of more be themselves. When I was a junior lawyer, you know, when I was in my early 20s, I had a pro bono practice alongside my main practice. My main practice in commercial litigation was, you know, that was a good 50, 60 hours a week. And then alongside that, I did 10 or 20 hours working for the Terence Higgins Trust. And that was working for their clients who were generally, well, they all lived with HIV. They were generally white gay men in their late 20s through to their 50s. And they were dying, right? So they all died. Every single one of them died. I was trying to stop bailiffs come to their house. I was trying to stop them be evicted. I was trying to get them their pensions paid in a lump sum early. I was trying to not have them be harangued by neighbours, etc. So the bit that I had to deal with was the fact that the generation that basically it was me, but 10 years older, were dying. And I sort of had to, it's quite weird where you have a death practice, which is essentially what I had. And so that makes you feel much more that you have to help people, right? Makes you feel much more. And, you know, I was only one of many lawyers that did this work, but it just makes you feel that there are people that are excluded, that there are consequences to that, and that you want to reach out to those people and bring them in. And I have to say, some of them had the most fabulous, dirty sense of humour. We used to have some laughs, my clients and I, and the stuff that they were joking about, even as they were in the sort of palliative care wards in hospital. Just to see that sort of resilience, just to see what there is in people's personalities, and particularly where they're non-dominant. I love the fact that in London you get on a bus and there is everything. There's every language, there's every religion, there's every ethnicity, there's, you know, generally low SEV on the buses that I get in. I love that. I think that's wonderful. I think that's part of the world. And that's what I want the legal sector to look like. I want it to look like the people that get on and off the buses that I get in on the morning, is what I think. So
Basically, the legal sector should be a London bus.
but I have said this to like managing and senior partners, right?
I love the way you see things, and I love what you said about your start and end. And it reminded me of this quote which says, "You don't choose your beginning, but you can choose your end," and that is so powerful. And I think especially in this context as well. I do have a question for you about this. I'd love to hear more about your back when you started working in law. Did you feel like it was an industry that was psychologically safe for queer people?
So weirdly, my first firm had a gay managing partner. He was an absolute superstar, And there were a few partners that were out, obviously mainly in the entertainment law section. And so that was good. But there were the very few at the junior end and very few in the mid. My sense is you sort of waited till you became a partner to come out. And no, it wasn't. And it was about, for queer people, and I would argue potentially for other people that are not from, you know, the dominant culture, there's definitely a, not necessarily understanding you, but definitely for gay men, there was an underlying thing of you're not quite right, you might be wrong, you might be evil, you might be diseased. I left one very small law firm, and I understand from one of the secretaries that they bleached my desk after I left.
Oh
Right?
my gosh.
That's not lovely. I have been told, I respect you very much as a colleague, Patrick, but you and your husband are going to go to hell for your lifestyle choices. Last year, someone took a brick to my head as I was walking home one evening. I have had people say the rudest things about me to other people in front of me. I've had a partner at one law firm say to a female client in front of me, well, Patrick's just one of the girls, isn't he? He's not a real man. I've had those sorts of things said to me, and it's definitely got better, but it's nowhere near there. And there's this sort of assumption that if you're a person with, different melanin, is that right? Is that wrong? Type of thing. There's that. No, it's definitely got better, much better. But the boardrooms across a number of law firms are closer, but they're not yet there in terms of that London bus thing, right, looking like that. That is coming, and that will come more. And there's loads of education, particularly in a law firm like mine, which is so helpful. People talking, esteemed thinkers coming in, us understanding, reading books, which is so helpful just to break down that awareness. Most people are really decent people, but they might not act brilliantly sometimes if they don't know you. And I think it's really difficult not to be nice to most people if you know them. So the more people know each other, the more people are allowed to speak their voice is good. But just on the queer thing, I'd sort of thought this had been sorted. I thought we were fine, right? This firm is number one in Stonewall this year, which is an amazing achievement. Shout out to Jenny Lloyd, who led the project on that. And that's great. But with my City Century work, where I'm bringing in solicitor apprentices, I've had one who joined a firm a month ago through our program, contacted me, am I allowed to be out? Because my careers advisor told me I'd never get into the law because I'm queer. And I was like, oh my God, you're going to have a whale of a time. Let me introduce you to 400 people. I saw him last week. He's like, I've never felt so welcome in my life. I've never felt so included. I can't believe it's because that was not his school experience either, right? And then so I've now got him mentoring a 17-year-old in one of the home counties who also wants to come into the legal sector, and he's being told he can't do it. So this person is now helping them and going, no, it's fine, it's great, it's going to be great, we're going to help. I really love that. And what I do love about LGBTQ plus people is they have all had some sort of journey and they've learned stuff through it. Plus we can arrange the heck out of an event. If we're going to put an event on, it's going to be the best, right? So that's fun. We know what the best canapes are. Worry not. We've got that track on speed dial.
Amazing.
Yesterday I was in Birmingham at Aston University. It's a Solicitors Regulatory Authority conference about how can we ensure that the entry into the profession and through the profession for black lawyers is as fair as it possibly can be. Woman serving lunch, Shania, someone gets talking to her. Turns out she's done a law degree and she's got the LPC and she's serving, I think she's doing the LPC, is finding a challenge getting a training contract. Doesn't know anyone in the industry, right? Absolutely know anyone. She knows 15 people now because we've introduced her to people, and now she's getting connected and she's building that network, and that will massively help her. And so just that awareness of who's in and how to do it, those are the two main things. And I think the third thing is the bit that you and I have been talking about is when you're in, does it feel like are these your people? Is this your squad? It's really for you. Are you going to get the same opportunities as others? I think in firms like Links, you do. And I'm sure in lots of firms you do, but it might not immediately feel like that, including because you won't necessarily see someone who looks like you at more senior or levels, right? So I think it's about awareness. I think it's about affinity. I think it's about funding. And then when you're in, it's about, am I included? Do I belong? Apart from that, no issues, Holly. Apart from that, no issues.
It's like a London bus apart from that. You know what's crazy, right? The fact that I had in my mind that, although I did it anyway, but that I didn't belong in law because of my accent, and I worked in London as well, and I felt like a real outsider. And yeah, that's just an accent. I cannot even begin to imagine what other people with other different backgrounds, what they experience and what they go through. How does someone, let's say someone's listening to this and they have an unconscious bias and a conscious one as well about themselves and limiting beliefs, and they think, I cannot possibly get into the legal industry because of whatever reason, what would you say to them?
So I have a few techniques that I use, and they work for me. Try and get others to them, and you will find them on my LinkedIn page. In order of regularity, I have a constant self-affirmation thing going through my head. If I get up in the morning and I'm still alive, that's a win. Well done, you're alive. There are the dogs, great. I've taken the dogs for a walk, well done, that's great. Dogs had a poo, brilliant. That's another thing. Get on the bus, I'm on the bus, it's amazing. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm doing a thing few things on that. Great, that's done. So by the time I walk into the building, there are 20 things that I've done and I've gone, well done, and that's been good. And I feel that it's a very low bar for something to make it onto that list. So that helps my self-affirmation. Now, I would argue that if you're having a harder life with more layers, you will have more of these wins as you're going through. You have more of these challenges. And I acknowledge effort more than achievement. So you tried is a win for me. So I do that constantly. And then every Friday, I have a FGAYF, FIGYAF, I think that is, which is Feel Good About Yourself Friday. So I will take some time, 5 minutes, and think, what happened this week? What was that like? What did I do? How can I clap myself on the back about that? What have I felt good about? And then how can I deploy that going forward? If I've had a difficult conversation with someone, I can do that and I can go. And what that means is, the next time there's a difficult conversation, I know I've got to take a breath. I've got to write the thing. I've got to just give it a go. Again, on my LinkedIn page, you'll see that thing. And then the biggest thing, right? And this is the thing that I work with when I'm coaching people, and they can be in their late 30s or whatever, is what I call 50 shades of yay. There will be, by the time you're in your 30s or 40s, there will be 50 things that you've done in your life that make you a superstar. Writing that list is really existential. It's really deep. It's really like, it goes to the core of you. But remember the things that you have done in your life. I go through it chronologically, and there'll be something that you did at 11 where you were in an exam and you felt that you were failing and you were going to burst into tears, but you just kept going and you managed to pass that exam, right? And those are the things that when you write them down, they become your CV, your job application, your dating profile. They become the thing that have made you who you are. And we do not do that nearly enough, especially in UK culture, where we demean ourselves down. So if I give you an example from me, when I went up to university at 17, I hadn't filled out the right form. So I turn up at the Hall of Residence and they're like, oh, we don't have a room for you. I'm 17, right? It's the first time I've really been away from, home in a significant way. So they say, you can have this spare room, but tomorrow you're going to have to go to this other office and beg them for a room. Those are their words. You can have to beg them for a room. So I go in the next morning and I just thought, this is my first and last day of being a lawyer. I just thought, I'm not going to get a room. I'm not, can you imagine, right? This little kid, always felt an outsider, literally knocks on the door of the Hall of Residence, told, no, there's no room for you, right? Absolutely proved everything I'd always thought about being an outsider. But I went and I asked them and they gave me a room and I stayed and I got my law degree, right? But that's one of my significant moments, right? Because I remember walking over the bridge to the university crying, because I thought, that's it. That's the end of and I could have not walked into that room. So we will all have opportunities like that. I saw a former colleague who wrote about the fact that she'd been asked to do that by a coach. She just felt it was too much. She couldn't do it. So how wonderful is this? Her parents wrote the list of the first 20 things for her and sent it to her half an hour later, goes, here are the first 20 things. And there was something about some sort of plasticine making competition in kindergarten where she'd worked really hard and she'd won or something. And they'd gone back, shows how tenacious you are. And if that doesn't make your heart sing, if that doesn't bring you out in goosebumps, right? We've all got those moments. Like Holly, you decided, I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to do this. You decided to set up these podcasts. You decided you were going to really work LinkedIn. You became friends with Helen and Pamela. You reach out to people. All of those make you an absolute superstar. But no one's going to tell you that, right? Definitely not going to tell you that in a performance review because they don't want to be too nice. So you've got to do it for yourself, right? You've got to be your own cheerleader.
So true. Oh my gosh. I just absolutely love your positivity. It's just amazing.
No, but listen, promise me that in the next couple of weeks you'll do because your top 50 list will be, you will, honestly, when you write it, if you drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine is a good idea, no more than 2. That's another thing I'm brilliant at. That's not a good thing. I'm going to do this. And I sing better than Beyonce. We want to keep it realistic. Honestly, when you do it, it becomes, it's really emotional. And it just, I think it transforms people. I look positive, but I definitely have down days. I definitely have bits where I'm, I find my mental health is an issue for me. I do struggle with some stuff, but I'm not going to struggle because I'm not backing myself, right? I'm backing myself. So when I go to an awards show, and I've been to a few of them, very occasionally I win. I always go and go, I've got this in the bag, definitely going to win this, right? Genuine surprise every time, which is lots when I don't win. Genuine surprise, right? And then I would say to myself, there must have been some sort of mistake with the Excel spreadsheet, right? So that's why it went to that person. But I back myself, right? I'm in and I'm going to win it, right? Because I've
Whoa.
got to have that. And for the 5 minutes of I didn't win it, how unfortunate, I've had a week, 2 weeks, however long, of going, I'm great, right? That's what makes you strong, I think.
Definitely. You know what's funny? I had a similar experience with the whole university living situation thing. I also filled out the wrong form. And you know what they did? So I went to the University of Sheffield, right? There's two universities in Sheffield. I filled out the one for the other university, not my one. So I ended up in halls with a load of people I didn't go to uni with. But it was just like, what the hell? I was like, I can't believe this. But I had a great time, so that's all that counts, you know?
Clearly, you hung out with the cool people and got the degree from the academic university. I think you got the best of both worlds. But isn't it terrifying, right? You had that. You
Yeah,
just think that's the end of my world, right?
I was absolutely terrified. I
And you
was
know what?
just,
I tried really hard to be independent and filling in the forms by myself, and I hadn't let my parents do. My mum, secretary, would have absolutely seen that I hadn't filled out the form. Right? The form was literally in a brown envelope, in put it. Maybe I did fill it out, and I just hadn't sent it, and it was just in the file, right? I mean, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound the way it does, but I'm so pleased you had a really miserable start at university, so, because I feel like we've got like a thing now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, at least they actually gave me a room. It was just in the wrong university. I would have. I don't know what I would have done if they would have said to me, "You don't have a room." Like, period.
Yeah. And I think they knew that I would get a room, like someone would not turn up and it would be fine. So pleased that you had that as well. I feel slightly less.
Do you know the funniest thing? They thought I was foreign, that I didn't understand the paperwork. I was like, I'm not foreign. I'm English. I understand English, and I just got it mixed up. Sorry, I got the wrong. I just got the wrong uni.
And can you imagine, right? You and I trying to be lawyers and we can't even fill a form in, get it to the right people. Right? I mean, that should have been a like, look, you're out. You're not. This course is not for you.
This is a
Go and do,
sign.
go and do something creative over there. Don't come in here where we need left brain thinkers who can fill out forms and follow rules.
I know, totally, totally. Where does your resilience come from? Because a lot of people will be faced with all these challenges and barriers that you've, told me about in your past.
I think it starts with my parents. They were both hard workers. And my dad, who died 6 years ago now, he was the funniest man, right? I always used to say to my husband, who's the funniest man you know? And he go, your dad. And I'm like, well, where am I? He goes, you're second. But um, my dad was able to use humour to get him over. And believe me, in the army, right, where the promotions, aren't necessarily straightforward, and where you do get, posted to some places maybe that you don't want to be posted to, or where you do have to go on maneuvers for 6 weeks in some swamp in Europe, that requires a certain type of humour in order to get you through. So that helps me. I am deeply respectful of the generation of predominantly gay men who died in the 80s and the 90s. I am not going to fail. I'm going to succeed because I need to do what they would have done had they been alive. I need to honour them by doing stuff. This leads into my, I think, neurodiversity. This leads into my obsession for doing stuff and getting stuff done. People call me like a terrier and never stops, like a dog with a bone, all that sort of stuff. I'd love to switch it down a bit. The medication I'm on hasn't quite switched it down enough. But at least I recognise that. And then I'm sort of shame free, as in relation to failures. So I will embrace risk. I like doing stuff. As I say to people, I like to make a load of quick bad decisions and then deal with them afterwards, than not make one good decision. So because you're prevaricating, so I will jump. I'm the first one that will jump into stuff. Right? Neil, my husband, calls it. I'm very easy to sell to. Right? So you just need to go. So you said to me, will you do a podcast? I'm like, yes, right. Thank you. Those bring me experiences, including things that don't go quite as well as you might want.
Mhm.
Um, I'm also really not particularly looking back type person. I like to think I'm forward thinking.
Yeah.
And so I don't tend to mull over stuff. in the past. If something went that way, it went that way, and I'm fine with it. And then, of course, I've got this constant thing going on in my head saying that things are good, and I've given it a go, and that's good. So even if something, goes what some might describe as badly, I've got a narrative in my head that is pulling some good out of it. My husband always says, you can pull the positive out of anything. He has a very, very mild, very treatable form of cancer,
Oh gosh.
and nothing's going to happen to him. That's been very clear. But when he first found out, I was like, well, great. Now we know what we're dealing with. So now we're going to come up with a plan. So that's me, right? I'll come up with good stuff. It's really lovely having bad stuff happen, because it intellectually you then have to turn on the right side of your brain and be creative and work a way out. That's a positive thing. The main thing is my parents and honouring the generation that eliminated.
That's super impactful, really inspiring. So I know that when I was doing internships and when I was looking for opportunities within the legal sector, I know that a lot of them were not available to me because of financial means. A lot of them weren't paid. So it was like, you want me to travel so far and then not pay me, but how do I actually get that experience? It felt like a vicious cycle. You couldn't really get anywhere, so therefore you couldn't get anywhere. What would you say are the opportunities within law firms? And this could be, what they're doing to improve on this, because I know in the past that opportunities were available to people from privileged backgrounds and not necessarily so for people from less privileged backgrounds. What would you say that law firms are doing to address this issue?
Thank you. And look, I'm speaking not as a recruitment specialist. I ran some recruitment processes 2 or 3 firms ago, but I'm not on top of everything. So just, this isn't possibly ill-informed opinion, but I'm really impressed by what I'm seeing within law firms. There's definitely, I think, at least in the law firms I see, a real desire to expand that talent pool for all sorts of worthy reasons, but also for the commercial reasons that you want the best people in your organisation. So you want to fish in a big pond rather than a small pond. So I think as a principle, law firms are really up for that, and I think they are also being really innovative about first of all the requirement for work experience. So saying, you don't necessarily have to have that. And certainly with the solicitor apprenticeships where we're recruiting 18-year-olds, most of the law firms are not offering formal work experience, but you have virtual work experience, so you can do that from the laptop. We very much hope that you have. I see on the more, extended programs, so 1, 2, 3 weeks, law firms seem to be offering rates of pay, which are enough that you can certainly, manage on them during that period of time. They are going out into all sorts of schools, colleges, areas to make sure that awareness point is dealt with, and they are giving bursaries for universities, for obviously for LPC type equivalent, SQE type courses, but also coming in. I think it was Paul Weiss are offering, I think it's £250, so you can spend that on clothes that you feel that you might want. We certainly at this firm, we do not insist that you dress a certain way. We say come as you are, etc. I think that's really important. And then there's lots in terms of equipping people, giving them information to help them through application processes, and then matching people with mentors and what have you. So I think we're doing quite a lot. I'm sure we're not doing enough. I'm sure no firm is doing enough, but I really like that. And I think the biggest thing that will change going forward is the prevalent culture, the prevalent populace will change. Dare I say it, will enhance a little. We'll have more people from more different places, with different stories, different insights, and it's that London bus thing, right? It'll look like, it's looking more like the inside of the London bus, definitely at the start level, but also at the decision influencer and decision maker level. And as that comes up, bear in mind what I was saying before, is that the people that will make it through that recruitment process from, say, low socioeconomic backgrounds will be, of necessity to get through it, they will be superstars. They will just be exceptional. With the solicitor apprentices, I call them the Mozarts of their schools. They will be, the 1 or 2 at the top. They will change it because everyone will go, A, you're amazing, but B, they will go, I'm amazing, this needs to change. So if I can give you, another example, last week we had a welcome tea at the Ironmongers Hall. These places do exist in the city, beautiful old setting, that like something from a Harry Potter film. It'll definitely look like the inside of an Oxford or Cambridge University. Not that I went to either, but I have seen some films where they are in them. And all the pictures, which were from last century, the century before, etc., were of old white men like me. And I said to them, look at those pictures. I said, look at yourselves, right? Because there are 100 of them. You're the new power. You'll be managing associates in 10 years. You will be partners in 20 years. You will be owning the firms in 30 years. And in 40 years, I need you to have left a really brilliant legacy. And we looked at these pictures and I said, those pictures need to look like you, right? So pick the frame that you like the most. Know that that's where your picture's going into, and then make that happen. And that is what I think will happen. And the law, and I hope the City of London will look like the London bus, right? It will be intersectional, it will be cross-population, it will be representative, it will be equal access to all who can get in with all of their skills, etc. And I'm super, super, super excited for that going forward.
We are so excited to help you unlock LinkedIn's potential with our LinkedIn Starter Pack for lawyers. Across 11 chapters, we'll walk you through creating a profile that stands out, crafting content that connects, and building a network that works for you. It's designed to help you take your career or business to the next level. It's completely interactive, so it's not like reading a dull book on marketing. Go to the link in the description of this episode for more information.